I could say, oh, sure, my website was successful on paper, but really what mattered to me was the woman who came up to me in the grocery store and held my hands and said, we're going to have a Hallmark moment right here. You have no idea what this website did for our family.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crazy Good Turns, the podcast that recognizes and celebrates people who do great things for others. I'm your host, Frank Blake, and I'm thrilled to have as our guest today, Stephanie Nelson. You might not recognize her by name, but you likely do know her work as the Coupon Mom. Beginning with a website by the same name in 2001, Stephanie became famous through TV appearances on Good Morning America and The Oprah Winfrey Show. On those shows and many others, she taught people how to save major amounts of money. And along the way, she built a following of more than 8 million members strong. What you and others didn't see on TV was the 3-year struggle for Stephanie to even get started. You didn't see how those coupons were once a necessity for her and her family to make ends meet. And until now, you couldn't have known how a speaker at Stephanie's church inspired it all with some wise words. Words I think you too will find both inspiring and helpful. In today's show, Stephanie shares the story behind the story. She'll discuss how she discovered her passion and the moment she realized she could use it to help others. You'll also hear how all that service to others came back to her many times over. Today's show also includes some interesting coincidences from the Crazy Good Turns universe. You'll find out which past guest from our show ranks among Stephanie's favorites from her own podcast called Pivotal People, and you'll hear how another Crazy Good Turns guest, Bob Goff, helped her write her new book. That new book is titled Imagine More, Do What You Love, Discover Your Potential. Stephanie says the book is a roadmap for anyone who feels they have a dream that's too big to come true. I've read the book and I truly enjoy it. I think you will too. That's why we'll be giving away 50 copies of the book to listeners who sign up on our website, crazygoodturns.org. To sign up for your chance to win, just go to our homepage and search for Stephanie Nelson. You'll find a link to the giveaway along with the show notes. Stephanie has a great story to share about faith, hard work, and helping others. Let's have her tell it in her own words. Here's our conversation with Stephanie Nelson. Stephanie, it is such a treat to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I love listening to your podcast. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
So I want to start with, I have your new book and we're going to offer it to our listeners. I look at who blurbs a book because that's always fascinating to me. And you've been praised on your book by Andy Stanley, Bob Goff, and Clark Howard, who I think are probably 3 of the absolute best communicators in our country. And so that's the first comment. And then the question from that is, if you go back in time, did you ever think this is where I'm going to end up? I'm going to end up writing books that people who communicate with the entire world think is a great book?
Wow, what a great question. Of course, I never thought that. I'm 60 years old. I wrote this book. I looked back over the past 23 years, and it's always so easy for us to see things in retrospect, isn't it? But at the beginning, I certainly didn't know what was ahead. So I have to agree with you. Those 3 men are 3 of my most admired men, and they have all helped me so much in my journey.
And there are more. So those aren't the only ones who praised your book. Before getting into the Coupon Moms and your book, I'd love a little bit more about, I saw you worked at P&G, you worked at Marriott, and then you left to start life as a full-time mom. Take us through a little bit of that journey.
Well, it's interesting because I see that you're on the board of P&G, so I thought that was kind of fun. Sure, I went to college, I got out of college, and I went into sales, and I actually tried to work at P&G 3 times. I had to interview with 3 divisions before I got a job, so I always tell people persevere, okay? And did that for a few years, and that was good. I ended up seeing an ad in the paper in Washington, D.C. for this great job at Marriott, and I sent a resume in. And I got the job because the woman who was hiring had come from P&G. Isn't that funny? So I went to work there, and wonderful experience. Loved Marriott, national sales, and there was this really cute guy who sat next to me, so I married him. We've been married 33 years, so I'm not ashamed of that. And we did start a family. So unexpected. I thought I would work forever. I thought I had these goals of being a big vice president, but gosh, when I had my sons, I just really wanted to be home. And that was really probably the best thing ever because we unexpectedly were thrust into a tight budget. We had planned our life on 2 incomes. And so that's how I became very adept at saving money in every area, which is why I followed Clark Howard, which is why I learned how to use grocery coupons. And it just turned into something I never would have expected.
So you rose to fame as a coupon mom. So maybe describe for our listeners that journey and when did you realize you had a knack for couponing?
Well, what's interesting, Frank, is that as soon as I figured out the coupon thing, and we're talking, people listening will know, I was that woman in line in front of you with a stack of coupons and you wished you hadn't gotten in that line. This was 20 years ago. That's how it used to work. And so I was excited because I discovered you could get all these free groceries and I would tell friends about it. They didn't care. It's too embarrassing to use coupons. But the turning point was when I heard a speaker at our church, a woman, and this is what she said, and this is what I hang on to, and this is what I tell everybody. If there is something you love to do and you can figure out how to use it to help other people, then you have just landed on God's exciting plan for your life. And I thought, well, gosh, the only thing I really love to do is grocery coupons. I don't want to tell anyone that, but I did tell God that. I did. I prayed about it every day. She said, pray every day. And on day 11, I went to church, and in the church bulletin, they had an appeal for donations at our local food pantry. I'd never directly donated. I donated food in a collection bin at a school food drive, but I'd never actually gone to a food pantry. But Frank, what I noticed was every item was a coupon item. So just for fun, I went to the store the next day and I got $60 worth of groceries that were good for the food pantry at a cost of $10.
Wow.
And that's what started it. Then I just bought groceries every day. I taught little seminars at our church and our school and the community, and just grassroots effort in my community. Started a website and I would list the deals every week and people would follow it. And that was 3 years. 3 years of, I heard a guest on your podcast say, 3 years of unimaginable work that was deeply fulfilling.
Yeah. What appealed to you about couponing? Is it like fishing? You get surprised. Oh my gosh, look at what's here now.
It was a puzzle. It was a fun puzzle. And because I'd worked at Procter & Gamble, I had an understanding of consumer marketing. And so the way it would work is 1 week, the company would put out a coupon, 50 cents off Ragu. But then they know that we didn't save that coupon. They know we threw it away. We lost it. So 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, they put Ragu on sale for half price. But a couponer knows you hold on to that coupon and then the store is going to double it and now you're getting free Ragu. And if that's not exciting, I don't know what is.
Wow. Very cool. And as your website was gaining popularity, how did it start to go national?
Well, this is the crazy good turn. So the situation is I've done this for 3 years. I have some grassroots traffic, but it's the only way to grow would be for me to hire staff and hire advertising and hire marketing. And it was just me doing data entry and doing this speaking. I didn't have any extra money and it was too small to get advertisers. The website was too small. So I just accepted this as my fun hobby and I love it. And that's payment itself. And then what happened is that I went on a local television show.
In the Washington, D.C. area.
In Atlanta, Georgia. We had moved to Atlanta, and I went on Good Day Atlanta, and it was the holiday times. They wanted me to demonstrate how to get a table of free groceries for charity, because that's when food drives happen. And so I had my table, and I'm excited. I'm on the news. It's 5 minutes of live TV. The other guest that day happened to be a television professional, And he traveled all over the country going on TV all the time. He was hired by companies to do this. And he said to me, "You have got to get on national TV." And I said, "Well, that'd be great. I'd send him all emails. Of course, I haven't responded. How do you get on national TV?" And he gave me the name of the producer at Good Morning America who decides if, unknown people are going to come on their show. And I'm just a mom from Atlanta. He said, "Here's her name. Call the switchboard. She answers her phone on Friday afternoon. Tell her what you've got in 30 seconds. And I did. I called the next day and I followed up with emails and I followed up with phone calls. I probably bugged her way too much. And in 5 months, she had me on the show. And Frank, you know what? As if that wasn't enough. And of course, my website went crazy. Of course, it made $10,000 in one day. I mean, what was that? After the show, that night, I was back in Atlanta and she called my house and she said, "That was our most popular story of the day. Do you know anything else about how to save money? We'd like to hire you." Good Morning America hired me. It was so ridiculous. And they gave me the name, the Coupon Mom. I didn't make that up. They gave me the name. And so anyway, that was when it started. And they had me on the show, I think it was 17 times over 3 years. And then companies would hire me to be their spokesperson. My first spokesperson deal was dial-up internet for $10 a month. Anything that was inexpensive, a company would, the Coupon Mom. So it was a lot of fun, and it was, the best thing is that you want to talk about fulfilling the hundreds of emails I got from people across the country about how much they were saving for their families.
So people would communicate to you saying, "Thank you so much." Really?
They would. I mean, more emails than I could possibly respond to. That's how wonderful it was.
Wow.
I mean, we did end up getting 8 million members. And I think that day that I went on that local Atlanta show, we had about 3,000.
That's amazing. I'm fascinated looking at the background of what you were doing and the role of the IRS in that. Just strikes me as so ironic and amusing. Maybe you could explain it.
Well, I would like to tell people this story because this is what I hope will encourage people, because most of us have a dream and it's limited in some way. It's limited usually, by money or time. As I told you, mine was limited by money. So before I went on Good Day Atlanta, before I went on Good Morning America, our church minister and the CPA for the church said if I could get my website to be a nonprofit organization, then I could get donations and grants and it could really grow. And that was the only possible source of funding I could see. So the CPA took me on as a pro bono client. He did a very detailed proposal for my website. And the IRS agent called me after a couple of months and she said it was rejected. Now, Frank, what's interesting is that in further research, she was wrong. I know this has never happened that an IRS agent would be wrong, but she was wrong. But I started to cry on the phone. I really thought this was the end of everything. And she said, she felt so sorry for me. She said, "You know what? Here's what I'll do. I'll just withdraw your application. No one will even know you applied. And if you can just change it," they wanted me to take out the part that helped people save money. That was like the only part that mattered. And I'm like, I can't do that.
That is a charitable part of this.
Right. So she said, "Your website helps people save money. That's not a nonprofit organization." Of course, we know that's not true. There's plenty of, but here's the good thing, is I believed her. I believed her. And I tell the story in the book. I was so discouraged. I got down on my knees next to my bed that night, 9:30 at night, and I just asked God to take this obsession away from me. It's been 3 years and I'm driving everyone crazy. Just take it away from me. I still will do the website. I love to do it, but just let me accept that it is what it is and it's not going to be big, but it's good enough. And when you do that, I always say, God is happy to trade our problems for his peace. I'm not saying he is a genie in a bottle and you just ask him, but I didn't even turn on my computer the next day. And that is when, 12 hours later, for the first time ever, Clark Howard recommended my website on the radio, and I had never even talked to the man.
Oh my gosh.
And that's how I got on Good Day Atlanta, because they were like, well, if Clark Howard's talking about it. And then that's how I met the guy who told me about Good Morning America, and then they hired me. So I look at all of that and I think, would I have persevered so much? No, I actually sort of had to give up. I was kind of giving up. And then I get this gift on a silver platter. If anyone who lives in Atlanta knows that Clark Howard is gold. I mean, he has so much integrity.
And beyond Atlanta, the whole country.
The whole country, yes. So at any rate, that was just a good example of, oh, and then my CPA, I have to tell you what's funny. Well, then it ended up making money, right? The website ended up making money. We didn't charge people. It only made money because so many people used it. And so then the ads on the website made more. And the ads were good stuff. It was like print a coupon for P&G. So my CPA said later, the best thing that ever happened to you was that you did not get, because I would never have gotten millions of dollars in grants. I would never have gotten that much money. I would have gotten $5,000, but the website made millions of dollars. So then I was able to hire lots of people and we were able to develop it and have great technology. It all worked out beautifully.
It's just so ironic that the decision that you didn't qualify as a charity turns into a decision that helped you help even more people charitably. I mean, it's just one of life's rich ironies.
I love that. And let me point out, Frank, I've certainly given the IRS a lot of money since then. So I actually kind of...
So what, if you look back on it, what was your biggest surprise in starting it all? And what do you wish you had known beforehand?
Oh my gosh, there's so much I wish I had known. The biggest surprise had to be when Good Morning America said they wanted to hire me. I mean, that hadn't even been in my wildest daydreams. What I wished I had known, I mean, you know how much we learn in our careers as we go along. I had to self-teach myself how to do what I call digital marketing and the whole website things. If I had understood at the very beginning what I understand now, it would have been easier for the business to grow, for the website to reach more people. If I had understood more about, if I had been willing to hire someone who understood that, really wasn't willing to risk our family's money. But that's probably, I wish I had brought some people in to help me get it off the ground sooner. And whenever I say this to my husband, Frank, he says, oh my gosh, honey, it was successful beyond our wildest dreams. Do not second guess anything. Maybe it was good that I had to learn it all along the way.
Out of curiosity, did your national fame impact your husband and kids?
Oh, sure. I'll tell you something funny. I went on a big surprise. I wrote about it in the book, but I got on the Oprah Winfrey Show. I was only on her show for a total of 5 minutes, and it changed my life. And here's why. Because remember how I told you I didn't really understand the digital marketing thing? The day after I was on Oprah's show, my website went to the top of Google for all of the important search terms. Yeah, there's a coupon company who is my advertiser, and they're number one. But I went above that because Oprah drove so much traffic, and it sat there for 6 years. So that was 40% of our business for 6 years simply from going on the Oprah show for 5 minutes.
Incredible.
And so my husband, my mother always said I married the perfect man because he is completely unfazed by two things: fame and money. Completely unfazed by that. He is a Boy Scout leader. He's the guy who picks trash up off the ground. He is salt of the earth. He is such a nice person. And he didn't let any of this faze him. And he made sure to keep me grounded. So I do appreciate that. We have a very nice life and a very nice marriage. And I think that if he had let my ego get carried away, but I'll tell you what, after I went on the Oprah show, my sons were, in high school and middle school. They got so much attention from girls, they were not complaining.
That was a good thing for them. So switching gears a bit, tell our listeners about your book, Imagine More, which has a long subtitle, but Imagine More. Tell us a little bit about the book, why you wrote it.
So the reason I wrote the book is because we have a mutual friend, Bob Goff, one of my favorite authors, and I'd read all his books, and I went to a workshop of his a couple of years ago, really just because I wanted to meet him. And when you meet Bob, he puts big dreams in your head. And I told him the Coupon Mom story, and he said, you should write a book. And I was retired, and I thought, well, you know what? Bob Goff will say he writes his books for his children. And I thought, okay, yes, he writes his books for his children, and anyone who wants to come alongside and listen is free to do that. Millions of people have done that. So I decided my sons saw what I call the highlight reel of the Coupon Mom experience, but they didn't see the stuff behind the scenes, the rejection, the discouragement, and they are men now. And I wanted them to have those stories and that perspective and the faith part of this story, even if I'm gone. And so I wrote the book as a manuscript, and Bob coached me through it, and it was very fun to write. And I had no intention of publishing it. It sat on my computer for 6 months, but I had the book written. And then I was approached by a publisher 6 months after that. And they published it. And it might, Nelson Books. I mean, you're going to do any better than that? I was so excited. And we'll talk about this, but they gave me money to publish this book. And remember, I never expected to publish it. So we're using that money in really fun ways.
Yes, I'm looking forward to getting into that. Before getting to that, just a little bit about the book, because it's been described as a practical guide that provides a roadmap for anyone who wants to succeed in achieving dreams that may feel too big to come true, which, wow, that's got to be a pretty big audience right there. So without giving away the entire book, what's that roadmap about?
Well, I feel like the roadmap is the important thing is the very first step, which is, what do you truly love to do? Okay, what is it that really sparks joy? Okay, when you land on that, and if I can say grocery coupons, then I think anyone else, their thing is going to be better than that. So no shame in whatever your thing is. What is it you love to do? And if you can really give thought to how you can use it to help other people, that combination is exponential, Frank. And then you kind of start, what I did was I prayed every day, Lord, please show me how to use this. Please show me how I can make this something that is my dream. And step by step, he did. There were all kinds of things that happened. So when I say this, I do say it to my kids, and I have one son who has kind of implemented that. He took a childhood hobby and has turned it into a business, but it's not really the money he's making that gets them excited. It's the children who are catching on to this hobby. He's a grown man now, and he can see himself in these young kids. So he said to me, young children, especially middle schoolers, feel invisible. They feel invisible. And this hobby I love. And if I can give them attention and make them feel seen as I teach them this hobby, that's really what I care about. I want them to feel seen. So when you talk about fulfillment, it's not so much like I could say, oh, sure, my website was successful on paper, but really what mattered to me was the woman who came up to me in the grocery store and held my hands and said, we're going to have a Hallmark moment right here. You have no idea what this website did for our family. So when I tell people that, that's the joy you can experience when you land on the thing you love to do and then you can help other people with it. How do you measure that, Frank? And so when I talk about a practical roadmap, I did share. Remember, I said I didn't have money. There were a lot of different resources that I used along the way that helped me get off the ground. Relationships with people. I went to a local university and I got this huge, great software development package that they did. I wrote about all the people who helped me in the book. It's step by step. Like anything, the journey is the fun part, right?
Yeah. What did you learn about the journey, or just appreciated more about the journey from the process of writing the book?
Okay, great question. What I learned in the process of writing the book as I was looking retrospectively is it's like they just came up to the surface of the water, Frank. All of the people who helped me along the way. And so in writing the book, I wrote about a lot of people. Some people I hadn't spoken to for 30 years, some for 20 years. And I found those people on LinkedIn and I sent them their chapter. And I have reconnected with so many people from earlier parts of my life. And we now have a connection, a relationship. We're doing stuff together. And I am so thankful for that. And so many of them said they were blown away. One woman said, it is emotionally overwhelming to me to read this chapter that you wrote about me. What a gift that is. Highly relational.
I think it's a deep truth that we tend to look at our careers as our own thing. Maybe our family is part of it, but doesn't tend to go much beyond that, or a few key people. But when you really go down that path, you see so many people who, for no particular reason, they didn't benefit from it, helped you? I suspect from the way you answered that that's a hugely positive part of writing the book. Mm-hmm. And it's great reading it because you do get all these characters that you've interacted with during this process, some in the most unlikely of ways.
Exactly. And I always say to people, I say to everyone, I think you too, everyone needs to write their book. You know, your book from the heart. Leave it for your kids. And my theory is if we each read each other's books, because now what's happened is a lot of my friends and acquaintances have read my book, and we have a much deeper connection. So many people have said, I had no idea this was, and so I said, well, I want to read your book. We would all understand each other so much better. We'd probably like each other a lot better.
So I don't know whether it's a description of you from others or from yourself, that you have a bottomless source of energy. Was that underlying it when you kind of look at some of the key success elements? Was that a key success element, or you just took that for granted?
No, that was a key success element. But I was also 40. And I don't know if you've read the book Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks, but 40 is when people kind of peak. So I was 40, now I'm 60, I'm looking back. I want to encourage those 40-year-olds to do amazing things. But yes, I think a lot of energy, and you generally get energy when you're excited about something, but I don't want to minimize that. Of course, there are hard parts in the journey, and of course, there are discouraging parts. It's kind of like the stock market. If we were to look at the graph of the stock market over the past 10 years, you're going to see this huge hockey stick thing. But if you zoom in, you're going to see a lot of ups and downs. So I'm looking at the hockey stick right now, but if you had checked in with me on a Tuesday about 15 years ago.
Yeah, it didn't feel so the path didn't seem so clean, so clear. So for your book, you've done another crazy good turn, which is you're using the advance, as you referenced, and any additional proceeds to fund other people's dreams. Tell our listeners about that.
Well, first of all, I got this idea from Frank Blake because I pay attention and I am so amazed at what you do and writing the notes, and it's just so beautiful. And so I thought, okay, how could I help people who are where I was 23 years ago? So it's called the Imagine More Project. My tagline is, we give small grants to people with big dreams. When I was doing this 23 years ago, I had entered a contest. Dannon Yogurt was having a contest. I won $2,000, and I used it to buy my first computer. It probably wasn't a lot of money to Dannon Yogurt, but first of all, it was real money to me. But second of all, it was the affirmation that what I was doing mattered. So I have an application on my website, stephanienelson.com. It's called Imagine More. People can fill out an application, and it's just me looking at them. I have given out a few grants so far, and the fun thing is, Frank, that I kind of get a front row seat to the cool thing that they're doing. And some people want to have a regular connection. So one gal, I have a regular Zoom call.
They'd love to get your advice and counsel.
And I so love it. I'm all about that. Sometimes who's it going to be? Is it going to be the high school kid who's doing something for senior citizens and that $2,000 would buy materials? Is it going to be the third grader? I don't know who it is. Or so far it's been women who are in their 40s. But that's my podcast audience. So we're getting the word out.
I think it is such a reaffirming process that there's an element of, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to reach out and try to get a grant. And that means I got to pull myself together and describe what it is I'm doing. And that gives form to my own dream. And that, I would say that's a lot from my reaction to your book. That's a lot of it is, you give form to your dreams because it's very easy to walk away from them. It's very easy to keep them very general.
And then maybe you're a little bit accountable.
Yeah, right? Exactly right. Exactly right. You also, you do obviously have unlimited sources of energy or very vast sources of energy because you also have a podcast called Pivotal People, which is also terrific. So give a little bit of background on your podcast. Well,
thank you, Frank. I so love my podcast. I love your podcast, Crazy Good Turns. I listen to it. So when I started writing my book, Bob Goff said, you have to have a podcast. And I said, I don't know anything about a podcast. Why do I have to have a podcast? You just have to have one. Trust me. And what I discovered is Oh my gosh. First of all, I'm an avid reader. So I primarily have authors on, and it's primarily faith-based authors, although I'm completely open. Pivotal People is about people who are changing the world in some way, and pretty much everyone falls into that category. I've interviewed about 75 people altogether over the past 2.5 years, and I have learned so much from them. I am so thankful they'll spend time. It's fun to encourage. I have a rule. I don't have anyone on the podcast unless I've read their whole book. And in the past 2 weeks, I've read 6 books. And these are people who are passionate about what they're doing, and they're wise and they're smart. So unbeknownst to me, I really feel like in the past 2.5 years, I have grown quite a bit because I have learned so much from these people who are wise in all different categories.
So what are some of the lessons that you've drawn from them, or some of the surprises, something that surprised you in the process?
Well, I'll tell you, the guest that you had on your podcast, I had on my podcast after I heard her on your podcast, and she might have been the most impactful personally. Her name is Christy Nelson.
Oh, of course. Yes, yeah.
She wrote a book called Wake Up Grateful. And I love the topic of gratitude, and she kind of describes gratefulness as being different than gratitude. Gratitude is I am gratitude for a specific thing that happened or a specific blessing. Gratefulness is opening your eyes in the morning and saying, "Oh, I am grateful to be alive." She's a cancer survivor, so she had a perspective. I read her book, had her on the podcast. She was delightful. And then last year, a group of friends, everyone said, look, for Christmas, let's give each a copy of our very favorite book. And I had, at that point, 60 people on my podcast. I got everyone her book. And everybody loves it. I really think Wake Up Grateful. You're doing yourself a favor if you go to Amazon, you buy it. But that's just one. My gosh, I have had so many people, anyone who is passionate and is trying to help people with what they're doing. It's just a gift to be able to have a half-hour conversation with them.
It's an extraordinary medium to be able to do that. So I would ask, but I never like it when people ask me, who's your favorite guest? So rather than ask who's your favorite guest, is there some story that just has stuck in your head from the podcast that you go, boy, I've listened to lots of beautiful, amazing stories, but this one I will never lose this one?
Well, there's a lot, but here's what I'm going to share, which he doesn't share it with many people. I dug it out of him. Bob Goff.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So Bob Goff was an attorney. He'd been an attorney for 25 years. And he started writing books. I think the first one came out in 2010 or something. So let's call it 14, 15 years. Prior to that, he's an attorney, and he's in this extremely remote part of Canada where his family lives. And he was there in the summer. I've been there. It is so remote. You would not believe it.
You've actually been there?
Yes. You cannot get there unless you take a seaplane.
Oh, wow.
Or a very long boat. Anyway, so it's highly unusual for people just to go by his Canada place. So he and his family are looking out the window, and here comes some kayakers. And Bob's super outgoing. He runs down to the dock. He waves the kayakers over to the dock. Now, I might have waved from the window, okay? But this is a metaphor for life. He went down to the dock. He waved him in, invited him in, and ended up, they stayed for many, many hours and fed him meals, and they chatted, and he became friends with Don Miller, was the guy in the kayak, who is an author. And he and Don Miller became friends, and then Don Miller said to Bob Goff, you should write a book. And Bob Goff, he funds humanitarian projects. That's all he cares about, humanitarian projects in third world countries. And he made a lot of money owning his own law firm, and he saw that as a source of revenue for his humanitarian projects. He said, well, I have to be an attorney. And Don Miller said, you could make a lot of money with books. So fast forward, Bob Goff did write a book. It is an incredible bestseller. He's written many books. They are all bestsellers. I am talking about Bob Goff today, whose books have changed my life, as along with many other people. And my question is, what if you hadn't taken the risk to wave someone in? You didn't know what he could do for you. You weren't looking for that. You were just being kind.
That is a wonderful story.
I love it.
That is just a wonderful story. I love that story at so many different levels. That's terrific. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So I ask everyone that we get on the podcast, And for you, I know you've got so many people in your book and elsewhere, but if you had to pull up one or two people who've done a crazy good turn for you, someone who's just done something and you want to say thank you to.
Well, there are lots and lots, but there are two. One is, I refer to him, the man who I met at Good Day Atlanta. And I have to emphasize that he did not have to give me the name of the most important producer at Good Morning America. Do you know, he never even got on Good Morning America himself. Generally, you're competitive that way. And here's what I love, Frank, and you said this already. When we can do a good turn for someone with expecting nothing in return, when you do something for someone who really you think has nothing to offer you, not professionally or, network or business, I had nothing to offer him. And he was that kind. And he gave me that person's name. And then I told you I went on for a few years. Well, then Good Morning America let me go. It's a good story. It's in the book. And I'm not going to be proud about that. They fired me. All right. Okay. They fired me.
Our listeners are going to have to buy your book to get that story.
You have to buy my book to get that. Then I'm like, hey, I had no business being on the show 17 times anyway. It's got me off the ground. I'm done. Well, that same man, David Gregg, called me up after a year and said, I haven't seen you on TV. What's up? I'm like, oh, it's done. It's fine. Everything's good. And he said, oh no, you have to get back on TV. Oh, I said, I hired a publicist for a few months and she couldn't get me on. She said the topic's dead. He's like, no, you just have the wrong publicist. Frank, he gave me his publicist. Nobody does that. And she was the golden publicist. And we worked together for 6 years. She was definitely my best friend. She got me on national TV. I think it was 38 times, all these different shows. She got me on Oprah. Dear woman of faith. Unfortunately, she passed away in 2015. And she's in the book. Her name is Nanette. I mean, he did not have to do anything else for me. And he did that. Just to give you perspective, I think that when he called me and I said everything was fine, at that point we had 200,000 members. That's plenty. And with Nanette, we got to 8 million. Needless to say, we do have a Nanette fund at her church. That's what she wanted, but she was an amazing person.
That's an incredible story. That's an incredible story. The business person in me also thinks to whoever told you that no one's interested in this topic, and you go on Oprah for 5 minutes and it's the number one thing on Google. Boy, do they need to get re-educated. But anyway, the world is full of that too. The world is full of that too.
That's why we're going to keep saying perseverance, right? Just find another door.
This has been just such a delightful conversation, and we are going to offer copies of your book for free to some of our listeners. Encourage all of them to get the book because it is you write in a very conversational way. So it's a fun read, but also a very compelling read.
Well, thank you.
What an amazing story. So where should people go to find out all there is to know about Stephanie Nelson?
All there is to know, StephanieNelson.com. If you are interested, if you have a dream and you could use a little grant to get it off the ground, you just click on Imagine More and there's all the information you need. And believe it or not, my website, couponmom.com, is still going. We have converted it to all digital coupons. That's the way to go now. No embarrassment in the grocery line. You can save a lot of money. And Frank, people still need to save money. Only 50% of shoppers are using these digital coupons, and there are far more digital coupons than there ever were newspaper coupons.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'll give you a stat. At the peak of newspaper coupons, when it was really crazy, there were 200 newspaper coupons a week. Today, there are 1,000 digital coupons a week.
Wow.
And the great thing is women, or maybe I don't mean to be sexist, but my husband goes to the grocery store. He's never going to use a coupon. I just click the digital coupons before he leaves. He comes home. Today, he saved 33%. And he said, I didn't do anything.
I was going to ask, how much can you save? If I just take a fairly typical basket, bread and milk and eggs and that kind of stuff, how much can someone save?
Well, you can save between 25 and 40%. And the great thing is people used to say newspaper coupons, there's nothing for what I use, but it's different with digital coupons. Yes, you do get coupons for produce and meat and fish and all kinds of things that you never could get newspaper coupons for.
Fascinating. That's very cool. Well, Thank you for that, and I urge all of our listeners to find out more about you at stephanienelson.com as well as Coupon Mom. All right, terrific. Perfect.
Thank you so much.
I hope you've enjoyed our conversation with Stephanie. If you did, we'd like to invite you to sign up for a chance to win a free copy of her book, Imagine More. We'll be giving away 50 copies to listeners like you. You can claim your entry by visiting crazygoodturns.org. You'll find a link to the giveaway along with the show notes from today's episode. We appreciate your listening to our show. If you like what you've heard, please share Crazy Good Turns with friends. Please also support our show by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting platform of your choice. And connect with us on the social network of your choice. You'll find us at Crazy Good Turns, all one word. As always, I want to thank the team that makes Crazy Good Turns possible. Our producers, Brian Sabin and Megan Hanlon, editing and mixing by Score, and Leslie Nunn for keeping this operation going forward. Lastly, most importantly, I want to express my gratitude to you, our listeners, for being part of a community that celebrates people who do good things for others. Your giving of your time to listen to these interviews and acknowledge these good deeds is, I think, a crazy good turn of its own. Thank you for your help. We hope to see you again soon in our next episode when we celebrate another crazy good turn.